So by now, we've all kind of seen the questionable behavior swirling around the mainstream media and YouTube and the World Health Organization. We've seen this video that got something like 5.1 million views. It was these two doctors explaining how they've been told to blame every death on the plague, whether that was the cause of death or not. If they had the plague, they died of the plague. And part of this is there seems to be some financial incentive to call certain causes of death over other causes because, well, it looks like a lot of the models and numbers that we were provided with are way off. And of course, the establishment doesn't want a population that doesn't trust their projections, their experts, or their numbers. Because, well, look at stuff, look at agendas they're trying to push. I keep coming back to the IPCC. I think global warming is the great lie of our time. This is how they push their agenda. And notice, Michael Moore just exposed the corporate ties of all these green energy funds and green energy activists. And it's like it all comes back to corporate control. It's all big money. And in fact, he shows in Planet of the Humans how the Koch brothers, what's funny is these activists claim they're opposing the Koch brothers, but then since they don't dig into the numbers, the devil's in the details, they actually end up supporting these green energy products that give money to the Koch brothers. Very funny. And so there's a lot going on here that is not told to us at the surface level narrative. And of course they try and put it down by calling it a conspiracy. But I mean, it's a conspiracy to believe there are no conspiracies. Honestly, you got to think at this point in time, there's people behind closed doors that make plans that they don't necessarily make publicly available. That's all you've got as far as a conspiracy. So that in no way discredits what people are putting forward as at least potential ideas for what's going on here. And so people in general are getting pretty wise to this, and this is a funny story. It seems the Tanzanian president, his name is John Magufuli, he was getting suspicious of what the World Health Organization is up to, so he sent them scraps of a goat, a papaya, and a pheasant. And the WHO supposedly tested them all, and they all came back testing positive for COVID-19. So look at this article here. As the number of confirmed coronavirus cases explodes across Africa, the creeping involvement of the WHO has made some leaders suspicious of the NGO. Tanzanian President John Magufuli was growing suspicious of the organization, so he reportedly decided to investigate whether they were trustworthy and reliable as they claim to be. And this is very important because YouTube is banning videos and content is being suppressed because we're told we need reliable sources. We need trusted sources. It's not these YouTubers in their basement that are churning through numbers, that are looking for stories, digging up facts. We can't have that. We need the reliable sources, the trusted mainstream sources, the WHO being one of them, CNN being another, even though they used fake news to start two wars in the Middle East. We have to have just a handful of sources, and it's always what's recommended, it's always what's trending, and anyone that opposes these sources gets kicked off the platform or shadow banned or whatever. And so it's okay, fine. If that's how you want to handle it, fine. But if we're going to call them a trusted source, what do you do when they're wrong? And so this Tanzanian president, this was a pretty good troll. This was a pretty good test. Are you a reliable source? So he played what the local press described as a trick. I don't know why it's a trick, but he sent the WHO samples of a goat, a papaya, and a quail for testing. All three of the samples reportedly tested positive. When the president heard the news, he reportedly confronted the World Health Organization and then kicked them out of the country. And as of now, the World Health Organization has refused to comment on the situation. Now, if they were actually testing these things, papaya, all you got to do is look at it. So what does that tell you? It's just, if it's being sent in, it's coming back positive. This is the data being distorted. And these people that think, well, 9 out of 10 scientists agree that climate change is real. And it's like, well, here you can see these so-called trusted institutions saying the papaya has COVID-19. And these same institutions that put out their models that have got it incredibly wrong just a month into the future, we're supposed to believe they know what's coming in the next 80 years, and if you don't act in the next 10 years, planet Earth is doomed. And the solution's always the same. And it's the same with the everything the World Health Organization told us to do. Keep your borders open, right? Turns out, closing your borders, scientific research finds that closing borders is the most effective way of combating COVID-19. Not only did the WHO carry water for globalists, they carried water for China. And we're seeing this, and it's an institution that's been corrupted, so they put out fake data. They fake the data, they fake the studies, the models are wrong. This is how climate change can be a hoax. You see, this is how experts, if you see the word expert, just put shill in the place of that word. There's no experts, guys. At least not the way the media uses that term. I would actually like to see one person show me an expert that's getting any of their predictions right. Like, repeatedly. Over the years, show me one person who is a purported expert, who is making predictions into the future, who is consistently right. Because I don't think you can find it. I don't think there's anybody that's consistently right, whether they call them an expert or not. Because you just don't know the future. Find me someone that can get the stock market right, please. And make my retirement come a lot sooner. So this article continues. Well, this suggests two conclusions. Either COVID-19 running amok in Tanzania is much more infectious, or the WHO has been reporting incorrect results, either on purpose, as an attempt to bolster its credibility in the face of President Trump's attacks, or via error. Yet another indication that the WHO is badly broken, as liberal Vox described it back in 2015. So most rational people accept the latter as the more accurate one. Here you can see the tweet. Tanzanian President John Magufuli was suspicious of WHO and decided to trick them by sending samples of a papaya, a goat, and a quail for testing. They all tested positive. Now this guy, that's right on, man. But that's science, right? Testable, repeatable, reproducible in a lab, that's science. If the World Health Organization is doing science, well, you would expect consistent results that would not find a papaya has the flu. And they finish up, following the results, Magufuli fired the head of Tanzania's national lab, sparking a firestorm. Yeah, because you can't question the narrative. You notice the hatred of truth here. Just like the left now hates Michael Moore, because he's exposed them as money-grubbing frauds. They now hate this African leader because he's being scientific. You're being fooled with a papaya. You can't make it up. It's actually so funny. And this is this seems to be a trait of totalitarian, power-hungry people, is they lose their sense of humor. That's funny. That's legitimately funny. This guy sent a piece of fruit to get tested for a human virus, and they said, oh yeah, oh yeah, that's definitely got it. But you see, as people become corrupted, you build this web of lies, and humor just shreds it. I'm going to link to this guy below. His name's JP, or he goes by JP, and he shreds people that follow the mainstream narrative, and it's really, really funny. He's got I think over 2 million, maybe going on 3 million views. I'm kind of waiting for YouTube to ban it. But it shows you just the power of humor. And that if you're not blindly ideologically committed, you can still laugh at things that are legitimately funny. But if you're in kind of this, Jordan Peterson called it ideological possession. I don't know. He makes a lot of words up on the spot, but that's not a bad one. When you have this ideological possession, or what I would just call is a cult, when you are in a cult, nothing can be funny anymore, because funny is the truth. When people laugh at the truth, they say, oh man, that's too real. Like, that's so spot on. It's hilarious. Humor reveals absurdities in our ways of thinking. And it's very, very powerful. And so you'll see a lot of the humor that comes from the left these days. It's not actually like jokes. It's spite. It's a real nasty kind of dark humor, Stephen Colbert calling Trump's mouth, what he called that. Like, talk about spite. Like, that's not a joke. It's just rude. And so watch for this. Watch for if you just can't laugh anymore, because that's a sign you're going down the wrong path. An alignment with truth brings a lighter spirit, joy, pep in your step. You don't find that in those that are desperately trying to create and enforce a particular worldview. So this article finishes up. There's an unreliability of COVID-19 tests manufactured in China, and it's been a major problem for the U.S. and Europe, as countries and states have been forced to discard PPE purchased in China, often purchasing it at inflated prices because only 1/3 of the masks actually worked, and many of the tests have been found to produce positive and negative results, more or less at random. Can we just take our manufacturing out of China and admit the free trade crowd was wrong? I mean, I don't remember anyone talking about open borders worried for a second about the spread of disease. I brought this problem up when Seattle made it mandatory for kids to have their MMR vaccines in order to go back to school starting in January. I said, okay, well, what about all the illegals in this state? Are you going to kick their kids out of school? We don't know the medical history of any of these people. They're not documented. That's the thing with not being documented. But of course, there's a double standard. There's two sets of rules. And citizens are now, they're at a lower level. They're at a lower tier. It's really sad. That's what betrayal looks like. And you think, well, why would they betray us to illegal immigrants? And it's because they're instituting a new world order. In that new world order, there will be no nation state. You see, this is why they denigrate the native-born American citizen and put others above him. They can drive without driver's licenses. They can't be deported for committing crimes. The news media is endlessly favorable to them, no matter how horrible the crime. Well, the reason is we're being replaced, and not just replaced, but the population is being atomized so that there can be no resistance. They want to institute a new form of government instead of freedom. Instead of freedom, you're not going to have rights. You're not going to have a right to free speech. They're getting us used to that very quick. You're not going to have a right to bear arms. We're not going to be a free people anymore. There isn't going to be elections eventually, or there will be, but they'll be like Russia, where Putin wins every time, or Xi, who just declares himself president for life, and everyone says, well, what are you going to do? Just because nuclear arms made conquering the world through standing armies impossible doesn't mean there still aren't people trying to take over the world. And this finishes, but we'd love to hear Bill Gates regale us with data-based arguments about why the WHO is indispensable to the international effort to combat the coronavirus. Yeah, Bill Gates, who was kind of taking over the world. And then he formed the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and suddenly became It's All Virtue. It's just like labeling something green. Well, behind it is a burning coal power plant. Oh, but it says green. This is like, they played this trick in the 90s on us. They started calling things low-fat, low-fat bread. Everything was low fat, and people thought, oh, we're too fat. It must be because we're eating fat. And, we all know now it's sugar and carbs. But back then, it was, I think it was called the Zone Diet. It was real revolutionary. There was one that was almost all meat. You had to weigh out meat. And it was a little crazy, but what it showed people, and for the first time they realized, the food pyramid was a lie. How can the food pyramid be a lie? We've all been told that the food pyramid is spot on. It's like, yeah, it turns out everything we thought we knew about nutrition was wrong. Because these so-called experts didn't have your best interests at heart. And just like today, if you think the World Health Organization and the IPCC, if you think they're out there looking out for you, well, I think George Carlin said it best. It's a big club, and you're not in it.